please put your hands together and let us receive Reverend Janet Wood.
Good afternoon. Oh, that's sad. Wait, can I do it again? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. It's a joy and a gift and an honor to be here. I am so grateful for your vision and voice, your work and witness, your courage and commitment. What you do matters, and I really am deeply grateful to just be a part of this. I want to share for a bit some of the stories that come out of my connections with prisons. And I begin with a confession that I did not volunteer to go into prison. I was a single mom with 2 kids and 3 part-time jobs, had been part of the church my whole life, went to my pastor after my husband left. This is 1975. I've never even met anybody who's been divorced. And I say, this terrible thing has happened and I just don't know what to do and my life is falling apart. And he says, well, you're always welcome to come to worship, but you're no longer an acceptable role model. So you'll need to resign from all your leadership positions. I can't teach adult Sunday school, can't work with the youth group, can't be on the decision-making board. Said out loud, what I was kind of feeling at the moment, which is even God doesn't think you measure up. So I started going to this little tiny house church. We met in the garage of a house in the middle of a housing project. And they loved us back into life. I was a difficult, angry, hard to get along with person. And they really did love us back into life. Nevertheless, when this church announces that Christmas Eve services are going to be at the prison, I am not overly enthused. This is the main prison in Tennessee, closed now. Have you ever seen the movie The Green Mile? It's that huge castle-looking thing. So we get to the prison. And I go, not because I'm enthused, but because I am coerced by the one community that's holding on to us in a time when I have many folks holding on to me. And they tell us that the reason we're going to do this is we really can't hear the radicality of the Bible unless we move our social location. Not enough that we're in the biggest concentration of poverty in the city. We got to go to where people are threatened with death day after day after day in order to hear what this story just might mean. So we go, and the prison is on lockdown. So now we are a handful of people outside in the parking lot. I'm convinced nobody cares that we are there. They won't even know what we're doing. And then, despite the fact that it is Nashville, Tennessee, it starts snowing and sleeting. And now I'm really angry about the whole thing. So I figured, what I'm going to get out of this? Kids with earaches and sore throats. They're going to have to stay home from school. I'm going to lose money. I'm going to be behind one more time. I am remembering churches with poinsettias and candlelight. I'm remembering little kids doing the pageantry, trumpets with the choir singing. One time we even had a live donkey. And we are in the parking lot with this huge prison and nobody looking out at us. And it's snowing and sleeting, and we're trying to get candles lit, and the whole thing seems hopeless to me. And then all of a sudden, one of my kids says, Mama, look. And as I turn, and we're all holding up our little candles, you can tell this is 1975, I see in cell after cell, folks holding up matches and lighters. By the time we sing the closing song, I'm sure that the voices singing are inside and out. And it was for me a permanent conversion that both social location matters, defines how I understand the world, what I hear, what I see, who I listen to, and that I need a community to push me and hold me accountable. So I've been going into prisons ever since 1975. And the second confession I would make is I always get it wrong, right? I've never been caged. So I never will understand all the pieces of what that experience means. We're sitting in a circle and Frederick is talking. We're sitting in a circle when we do a circle process. And in the circle, we offer up our names, even though we know everybody's names. We remember that in much of the world and in most prisons and jails, people are not called what they would prefer to be called. In our circles, you get to choose your name. As you mention your name, everybody in the circle offers silent gratitude, and you can feel it. It gets kind of thick. They're glad for the gifts you're bringing in the circle. And then somebody poses a question, and everybody answers the same question. The question for that day is one thing you're grateful for. It gets to Frederick. Frederick has been on death row, and now he's been moved to the low side. He's in this circle. And Frederick says grass. And I think, damn, we've had this thick discussion, and you're going to be glad for dope? But I'm going to say that. Instead, I say, would you like to see more about that? And Frederick says, yeah. Everybody on death row who gets a chance to go out to the exercise cage, concrete on the bottom and wire all around you and on top, tries to stretch their hands through the wire bars to touch the grass. You can't do it. It's just out of reach, but I don't know nobody who don't try. 2 weeks later, Devin, who's been on death row for a long time, gets moved to the low side. And when he moves, he falls down in the grass and stuffs it in his mouth and his pockets, just laughing and rolling. And the guards let him be because they know what I missed. The power of touching something beyond concrete and wire. I just want to share some stories from our experiences in the work we do. We have facilitated the start of think tanks in a number of different prisons. The primary one we do in the maximum security prison in Tennessee is called SALT, Schools for Alternative Learning and Transformation. And when we do these circles, we often ask the insiders to have images of what this means. And for SALT, the images are a circle. So we don't do, sorry to say this, what we're doing today, which is one person stands up and the rest of you sit in rows and listen. We do circles. Everybody's voice matters. We can see each other. No one person is more important than another. We have notion of hands shaking to remind ourselves that this is mutual. Nothing comes into our circle that has not been decided by folks on the inside. There's no importing from programs from the outside without a decision that that's what folks want on the inside. And the last one is an image of a cage. Wire bars, because we are reminded that we're focusing on dismantling the systems that have created the cages, not fixing up the people that have landed inside of them. So SALT is this incredibly powerful think tank. In fact, one time it got so powerful they dismantled and shipped all the members to different prisons. But we exist in a number of different prisons. And we have started college courses at the graduate level, at the undergraduate level, for credit in a number of different prisons. And the requirement is that every professor, no matter who they are, has to be trained by the inside think tank. As you can imagine, there are some professors who get a little grumpy about that. They start saying things like, I had a professor from Princeton who argued, we worked with New Jersey STEP and started 4 credit college programs in 7 prisons in New Jersey, one of the best programs going. And the Princeton professor was like, I write books on teaching. I don't need to be trained by any convict. I'm not coming. You say, well, that's an interesting response, but you will not be allowed to teach until you have been trained by the inside think tank. So he comes and he grumpily sits through the whole thing. And then he comes to the second session. He's not quite as caustic. And he comes to the third session and we do a debrief because that's the last one. And he simply says, yeah, it was worth my time. The think tank trained Cornel West. Anybody know who Cornel West is? So Cornel West misses the training. And even though he's Cornel West, tough luck, can't teach till you come and you get trained by the think tank. So we got to have another session. He's the only person in this training. And he listens. I've never seen Cornel West listen so intently. And as a result of that training, he changes his syllabus. He changes his teaching method. He changes the way he interacts with folks on the inside. They know what Philip Gorovich wrote in his book on Rwanda, "We regret to inform you tomorrow we and our families will be killed," that coercive power is the ability to force others to inhabit your version of their reality. And that's what so many of us do who have never been caged, right? We force folks to inhabit our version of what we think that reality is. So we started divinity school classes because we were beginning to wonder how people who claimed the story of this man who is Black, brown, impoverished in a targeted, militarily occupied community gets criminalized, arrested on trumped up charges, caged, beaten, and then executed in a state-sanctioned murder is not actually seen as central to the connections with the current lynching process of the criminal legal system, right? I mean, that's the story. It's really clear biblically that Jesus is arrested on trumped up charges and he's killed by the state. So how is it that so many churches that claim this story are distant or worse, theological justifiers for the criminal legal system for mass incarceration? Walter Rank calls us kept chaplains of an unjust order. Look at most prison ministries, right? They're based on charity, not justice. That was mentioned before, but Howard Thurman used to argue charity is a form of violence. It robs people of their identity and their vocation, right? We're pulling people in. Oh, you need me and I've got what you want. It also makes people feel good about thinking they're doing something when in fact they're propping up the very systems that are perpetuating the problem they say they're dealing with. Prison ministry is often about importing programs that people have not asked for instead of any kind of partnership, and it focuses on individuals instead of the systemic harm. And Dume, a friend of mine, brilliant artist, I'll say more about him in a little while, but Dume spent 21 years on Tennessee's death row for a crime he did not commit. And he often says, all those years, church folks coming in trying to save my soul. Hell, I didn't need anybody to save my soul. I need somebody to save my ass. The theology happening behind prison walls is the most powerful prophetic theology around, right? If you want to hear people whose lives depend on understanding liberation, freedom, salvation, go inside somewhere like a prison or a jail, rather than any place else in the free world where that's an optional discussion. I'm reminded of James Baldwin's quote, "This is the crime of which I accuse my country and my countrymen, for which neither I nor time nor history will ever forgive them, that they have destroyed and are destroying hundreds of thousands of lives and do not know it and do not want to know it." How do we break through the invisibilizing, the false narratives, the lies, the myths that prop up our current legal system? So SALT is one way we think we're doing it. When we bring in these divinity school classes, half the students are from the divinity school and half the students are people who go back into cages after the class. So it shifts the discussion, right, on who has wisdom. This is a bet that the folks on the inside are the folks with the wisdom. We also do undergraduate classes and we've collaborated with a number of folks. I'm part of a national group called Inside Out Prison Exchange Program. We have trained more than 1,400 college professors and educators to bring their classes inside prisons. And then they begin to wonder, how does anybody graduate with a degree in sociology who has not been in discussion behind prison walls? Really? Critical race theory? You think you can get that on the campus? You know, I mean, even history, start thinking about Black freedom movement, sit in a prison and change the understanding. Anyway, the power of those is incredibly awesome, and I encourage you to look into the New Jersey STEP program. I believe in and work for abolition. I'm also believing that here and now we have to embody alternatives that break through this invisibilizing, that make people believe that change is not only possible, it's already happening. In Unit 2, which is death row on Riverbend Maximum Security Prison, when I first got permission to facilitate classes, I went in and said, what do you want to focus on? And folks on death row said, Community building and nonviolence. Another one of my assumptions out the window. I wouldn't have guessed that one. So we began with our circle, the name, the gratitude, the question. And then we do centering. And we often use Thich Nhat Hanh. Let us enjoy our breathing together. I am blooming as a flower. I am strong as a mountain. I am firm as the earth. I am free. And when we do that, even though you can still hear the doors slamming and the guards yelling and people hollering in the hall, it changes the atmosphere. Something shifts. This beloved community takes on flesh as people believe and live out that love has the last word right there in the belly of the beast, where they are told day after day their life does not matter. They have no right to breathe for one more day. They have connected. We started groups on the outside with young folks. We asked high schools to send young men to us who had trouble struggling on the streets, struggling in school, struggling with home. And the men on death row began writing them and wrote things like, we know what it is to feel like a piece of trash on the side of the road that no one notices. We gonna be there for you. We see you. They listened folks into life, as Emily Towns, womanist theologian, says. They listened folks into life. We focus on transformative justice. Anybody in here do something around restorative justice or transformative justice? Yes? Mediation? Yeah? Some? So restorative justice, instead of asking what law was broken, who broke it, how do we punish them, we ask what harm was done, how might the harm be repaired, and who might be a partner in repairing that harm. Transformative justice shifts that a little bit, in part because restorative justice, which has both African and indigenous roots, has been co-opted by white folks, and it simply becomes one more imported, imposed program. Transformative justice also says, what are the systems that keep this happening over and over again? So not only looking at individuals, we have trained more than 14 mediators on Tennessee's death row. And our system is acknowledged by the state and by that particular prison, so that on the main round place in death row, you'll see the names of the mediators. Because everything on death row is filmed, there are videos of the mediators who have been trained in our circle, intervening in a conflict, resolving things before the goon squad, that's not the official name, but I forgot what it is, before the goon squad, burst in, which is always a violent and awful encounter. They can mediate between someone inside and an officer. They can mediate between folks inside. They become visibly defiant of what the system says they are, right? They make visible the lies that have been said about them over and over again. We have accompanied Equal Justice Initiative, Brian Stevenson. So they go to the lynching sites, and there we dig up the soil and we tell the story of the person who was lynched and those who did the lynching. And we sing songs, we offer words. And in those circles, we bring folks like Ndume, who has spent 21 years on death row, who can say over and over again, lynching has not ended in this country. It continues through mass incarceration, through the criminal legal system. I hope that you look up Ndume Olatoshani. He is an artist. He always says art saved his life, that in a world that was drab, confined in solitary confinement for all those years, it was a form of life-giving to him. He's doing a new series, and it's on lynching. And there's a story in Mississippi of 3 men being lynched. 2 have died. The third one is being hauled up, and somebody hollers out, "Let him go." And they do. And Ndume believes he's the one that has been let go. Others have gone on, and others are waiting. And he studies the photographs of lynching each time, focusing on one white person. And he asks, is this the person who will holler, "Let him go"? Or is this the person cheering them on? He will be in Washington, D.C. I know Janelle is going to be there, hopefully, speaking at the French embassy for the International Day of Ending the Death Penalty with these paintings. So we work on disrupting and dismantling the cradle to prison pipeline. A number of folks in our circles were caged as children. Marian Wright Edelman, who I had the privilege of working with for a number of years, coined the term cradle to prison pipeline to counter the school to prison pipeline, because we think it starts a whole lot earlier than the first grade or kindergarten. And she argues that incarceration is the American apartheid and poor children of color are the fodder. So our teams to disrupt and dismantle the cradle to prison pipeline are folks who were locked up as children, artists and poets and organizers. And we have challenged everything from zero tolerance to legislation. We do series with middle school and high school kids on the cradle to prison pipeline, kind of mapping out what do the traps look like that they're setting for you, because they're setting them. And then at the end, Omari or Rahim or Ndume give the young folks the same desk we sit in the maximum security prison and an empty orange jumpsuit, jail jumpsuit, and say, what's the cradle to prison pipeline look like when it shows up in your neighborhood? And they can do anything they want to with it. Probably the one that made one of the churches we worked with the maddest was when they absolutely drained any air out of the suit, shellacked it, chained it to the desk, and then handcuffed a Bible to the desk, arguing that the church had used the Bible as a weapon, criminalizing them and excluding them instead of inviting them into liberation and freedom. So we're working to figure out what it looks like to dismantle zero tolerance in schools. We've done a lot of that. There are now in every public school in Nashville, Tennessee, some form of restorative justice, sometimes junkier than we wish, but zero tolerance has ended. We changed juvenile court. We first challenged the discrepancy between black, brown, white sentencing, had a juvenile judge who collaborated with us. She was then demoted. We then worked with the Community Coalition to get her elected as the primary juvenile court judge and she was elected. And then we moved transformative justice into the court system, which has now been deepened by a group called Rafa Institute. Rafa Institute it's a Hebrew word for wholeness and healing. It was started by Travis Claybrooks, a black cop who got tired of arresting black and brown kids, and Ashley Sellers, a white woman who was arrested at the age of 17 for felony murder, which means she had no weapon, she did no harm, she was simply in the car with someone who committed a crime. She was in for 21 years, and the two of them have expanded our work so that now kids, instead of going to court, have an option. The judge sends us cases, and they are dealt with outside the court. We're now working with Memphis and the new DA there, with 18 to 25-year-olds, and we have worked with adults. Because once kids get sucked into this court system, they're then 50% more likely to end up in the adult system. So creating alternatives that people can see that there's an option. We started something called TRIO, Transformation and Reconciliation from the Inside Out. We had all these students who had taken classes in the prison who wanted to do something. We had lots of folks coming out, so we combined the two. We do potlucks. We just hang out and have fun, celebrate. Everybody needs a place where they're going to sing happy birthday and remember your kids' names. Community and belonging matters maybe most to folks coming out. We created something that accompanies people through the horrendous process of parole hearings, gets people ready, helps them figure out what might make a difference. We do ongoing organizing work, whether that's legislative work or it's around court watches or it's things like participatory defense teams. I don't know if you all have those here, but we have them in Nashville. So instead of a person simply depending on one public defender, they have a whole team of folks who are investigating, who walk with them through the whole court process. We know, and I know this has been said over and over again today, but I just need to emphasize it, that the people with the problems are the people with the solutions. That the freedom movement is happening from the inside out. If we want to be a part of the continuation of historical freedom movements in this country, we will be collaborating and taking leadership from those who have been caged. There's so much inside that's visible. I'm watching this clock tick, so I'm just going to tell you one more and then quit, maybe. So the group that I was just with is called Be the Change. It was started by Queen T. It's in a core civic prison, which means it's a for-profit prison. As far as I know, it is the only openly queer community inside a prison. Stunningly beautiful in power. At least 4 trans women, about 12 gay men, and about 15 allies are in this group. So that in this horrendous, known for its violence, neglect, for-profit prison, there's a queer community of about 35 people moving through, visible, being who they are in safety over and over again, day after day. So the last time when I went 2 weeks ago and we were reading a book together, there was a new, young, had been part of the Vice Lords, came in, straight, Latino, and we're going around the circle asking why people are there, and he says, well, because Queen T told me that's not who I was. And I think she might be right. Right? I mean, that there's this mothering right there in that prison. There's an opportunity for people to be who they really are, which is what I think is most needed inside while we're making this fight for abolition. All right, I'm going to quit with these words. Vincent Harding, who was a colleague of Dr. Martin Luther King's, wrote his April 4th, 1967 speech, which I think, as many do, is why he was executed. Vincent Harding says over and over again, we are citizens of a country that does not yet exist. And James Lawson, who was called by John Lewis the architect of nonviolence in this country, says, we do not have to have the world in which we live. We must help unravel the movements that can turn all of us in the direction of beauty and hope and truth, using the powers of love and life that are in all of us. Zahara Simmons, a friend, a colleague, who was part of the Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964, part of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, talks about being in rural Mississippi, trying to get folks to vote, going door to door, telling them, you know, the freedom movement is coming. We're making the world change right around us. Well, she talks about the threats of violence, the blood running in the streets, the police force trained as occupying force, freedom movements criminalized, a time not so unlike ours, right? And she talks about how many times when she's knocking on these doors, the doors are just slammed because folks are scared. Folks don't know that this might yet be possible. And so she's preparing, as she talks to a woman through a screen door, for the door to be slammed one more time. But instead, she says in this instance, the older Black woman opens the door and says, girl, I've been waiting on you all my life. Come on in. I am convinced that the world is waiting on you, on all of you, to continue to agitate and advocate, to strategize and organize, to disrupt and dismantle, to challenge and change, to trouble and transform until, no kidding, all the chains get broken, all the prison doors get opened, and justice, I'm not kidding, real justice, flows down like a mighty river. Go do it. Thanks.